Welcome back to Origami Snowman. My name is Matt. This is part 2 of my nonfiction recommendations, and the last video that I did about nonfiction, I included a lot of fiction, and I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to apologize because as a writer, I know how important it is to include reality in your story. It gives it just a little extra bite. It makes it more tangible, and that's what a lot of these are. Some of these are straight up autobiographies. Some of these are drawn from personal experience. So let's get started. Drawn from personal experience, Slaughterhouse-Five. Now, yes, it is a story that combines a wartime experience with time travel. The time travel, that's not the part that Vonnegut drew from his personal experience. As far as I know, he was not an actual time traveler. That would be amazing, but I don't think he was. He was, however, a POW in World War II. So Billy Pilgrim, the main character of Slaughterhouse-Five, he experiences being captured by the Germans and forced into like a factory where they made a mineral paste, a mineral goop, like a syrup for expectant mothers. And they were locked in a freezer in a slaughterhouse. And the address of that slaughterhouse was Schlachthof 5, which is German for Slaughterhouse 5. So they taught all the POWs, if you ever get lost and somebody wants to know where you're at, what your address is, just tell them Schlachthof 5. That's where the title Slaughterhouse 5 comes from, if you didn't know. But Kurt Vonnegut was captured. He was a POW in Dresden during World War II. He did stay in Schlachthof 5. He did survive the firebombing of Dresden. He was one of very few who did. And the aftermath is drawn from his own personal experience. So this is a very relevant, very real story, even though Billy Pilgrim time travels a bit. It's whatever. Boy by Roald Dahl, Tales of Childhood. It's such a sweet little book. There's all sorts of interesting little stories that he just kind of brings up and talks about. He talks about having his tonsils removed. He talks about moving, away from Norway. He talks about his family's first car and how it crashed and he hurt himself. Talks about different adults in his life who inspired some of the horrible adults in his stories. The Trunchbull, the teacher in Danny the Champion of the World who would whip his children, his students, with a cane. Just all these horrible, awful people, but also where his love for candy came from that inspired Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So Roald Dahl, boy. We're going to stay right in line with autobiographies. And again, I said this in the last video, I love a rock star biography or autobiography. Lobotomy, Surviving the Ramones by Dee Dee Ramone. Good grief. That term, surviving the Ramones, is used very, very loosely. Dee Dee is no longer with us. He has passed on to that great, stage dive in the sky. But while he was alive, he shouldn't have been. The stuff that he writes about, the tales he tells, if you don't know who the Ramones were, they were a staple of the New York City punk scene in the 70s and 80s. Just these four grubby guys in leather jackets with shaggy hair. They wrote songs about prostitutes and about heroin and about, stealing cars and about, getting their mom to drive them to the beach, on a Saturday. Just the stuff that they dealt with as just these punks in New York. And I love the Ramones. You've probably heard them even if you don't know it. Blitzkrieg Bop is a really popular one. Hey Ho, Let's Go. You've heard that if you've ever been to a hockey game. The Ramones, one of my favorite bands. And Dee Dee, he wrote so many of their songs, but he also was kind of the pariah of the band. He was the first to leave the band. He would always get in fights with everybody. He didn't feel like he was getting his due, and he went out and he partied and partied and partied and was always needing to borrow money. The stuff that he writes about in here is shocking, even for the bassist of a punk band. He talks about shooting up heroin with with Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols using dirty toilet water. Like, horrifying stuff. And you just, yeah, so Surviving the Ramones, that's, that you can judge whether that's accurate or not. It's an incredible book, and I highly recommend it. I've read it several times. Now we're getting into biographies that are more tragic than even that. Into the Wild. John Krakauer wrote the story of Chris McCandless, who famously went off on his own. He came from a wealthy family, and he didn't want to be. He didn't like that lifestyle. He wasn't interested in wealth and in all the, you know, the trust fundness of it. He wanted to live free. He wanted to live off the grid, free of paperwork, free of, you know, taxation, free of anything but his own will. And so at a very young age, he wandered off. He just left. Didn't tell his family where he was going. He just disappeared. He hit the road. And he rode the rails, and he hitchhiked, and he had just what was on his back, and he lived the life he wanted to live. His dream was to live in Alaska, survive in the Alaskan wilderness. And he went up there and he found this old bus on the side of the road, and he lived in it. And it didn't move. It was, you know, rotting, and it was old, but he survived most of the winter, most of an Alaskan winter up there by himself in this old bus. Tragically, he passed away. But using his journals and photographs that they found with his body, they were able to piece together much of his life. And that's what this story is. And it is heartbreaking, but it is inspiring, and it's really incredible. A story about a young man who literally chased his dreams in spite of everything. We're going to do another Lemony Snicket. Now, last video I did his unauthorized autobiography. This one is Harsh Truths. It's I don't know what I'm talking about. I could just literally read it, but I decided to pull it out of my memory. My memory doesn't know anything. Horseradish. Bitter Truths You Can't Avoid. This book is so funny. It's I am a grumpy middle-aged man, and to have another grumpy middle-aged man share his thoughts is so refreshing. Here's just one. I don't even know. I opened it at random. It is one of life's bitterest truths that bedtime so often arrives just when things are getting really interesting. That is very true. That is very true. One of the remarkable things about love is that, despite very irritating people writing poems and songs about how pleasant it is, it really is quite pleasant. Yeah, Daniel Handler, he's very funny. He's a very honest writer. He's a very concise writer. He can make anything seem grim. If you've ever read A Series of Unfortunate Events, this is like a much more concise version of that, but all the tone is right here. It's delightful. So I recommend this. Just another, it's like a coffee table book, you know. You're not going to find any plot in it, but it's a fun read. And the last book, this is an autobiography. Catch Me If You Can by Frank W. Abagnale. About the amazing true story of the most extraordinary liar in the history of fun and profit. When a man totes himself as the world's greatest liar and con man and then writes a book about it, you can't be too surprised when you find out that he made it all up. Read it. It's so much fun. It's so much fun to believe that it happened. You know what I mean? Just all the stories that he tells. I mean, even though none of it happened, he clearly thought through it, and it is very entertaining. It's a lot of fun to read, and I'm sure you've seen the movie, Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, but all lies, total lies. Now, how is that different from any other fiction book that you would read? It's not, except that you went into it thinking it was true, and some people got their feelings hurt, but worth reading. Pretend it's real. You'll have a great time. Anyway, there we go. Those are some nonfiction recommendations for you from me. Yeah, there we go. All right, thank you guys so much. I appreciate all the pieces, and I love you to death. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the very next video. Goodbye.